So the recordings, as always, will be in two halves. So can you let me know you're okay at home? You can hear me still? If you could just let me know via the chat that you can hear me, that would be great. Got the recording starting again. I'll just check that. Yep. Okay. All right. So what we're saying now, is we're thinking about strategic approach to integrated marketing campaigns. And we're thinking that actually there are two approaches to this. The first is that you think about it in terms of positioning, and the other is that you think about it in terms of your target audience. In terms of positioning, you know, it's just standard STP stuff, yeah? You're thinking about a segment, you're using the application of a segment, not to think about who you're aiming your marketing at, not your marketing as a whole, but you're thinking about what you're doing with your marketing communications. So segmentation isn't really to define a target market, it's to define a target audience. I don't want to labor that too much, but that's a slightly important distinction, isn't it? Is that if you were segmenting for the whole of the marketing department, you might be thinking about tapping into a new market. Think about the Anzoff matrix. But if you're doing marketing communications, you're not really thinking about the end buyers, you're thinking about who you're going to aim the message at. So it's more of a target audience than it is a target market. A bit of a small distinction, perhaps I'm nitpicking, but if you understand that, maybe it would help you just to see integrated marketing communications as being part of marketing. But it's all pretty standard stuff, isn't it? So marketing is about segmentation, and targeting and positioning. It's about identifying a group of people because you don't want to go to everybody in the world. You want to go to people that live in Norwich. And you have, don't you, in your mind, you want to position your product or your service. We are the only or the best in Norwich. We're the best in Norwich that delivers this amazing widget product for you. So you're positioning in your customers' minds what it is about you that makes you better or differentiates you from the competition. And targeting is saying, well, I'm not going to use any marketing techniques. I'm going to stand on the street corner and shout it. Our widgets are the best, and people will come flocking. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put up an amazing billboard. I'm going to put up this amazing billboard that flashes up the name of our widgets and explains where the shop is. All pretty basic stuff, isn't it? Segmentation, targeting, and positioning. And you might even use, the 4 Ps. You might think about how you're going to use, you know, product place and promotions within that kind of communications thing. And there you might be thinking about, in terms of positioning, you might really easily thinking about kind of product attributes in the way that Nike Adapt has kind of a amazing lacing technology. Or you might be thinking about, you know, technical differentiation, like Tesla as the kind of just about the first mass-produced electric car of any performance. Or you might be thinking about the benefits that you offer. So Booking.com offers discounts for frequent customers or altered usage occasions. So say like in a 24-hour gym, or just a different target users. So an investment management service for individual investor, not only for a big corporation. Or a special experience like Netflix might offer an interactive movie, or celebrity endorsement in the way that Virgin Media have used Usain Bolt in the past. So it's all about the position and how you're asking your customers to perceive your offering in their own understanding. And it's about perceptual maps, isn't it? And on this perceptual map, this one's a bit more straightforward, and it's putting in, isn't it? It's putting in high product range, a low product range, and it's offering cheap and expensive. And it's got, what has it got? It's got Waitrose and Sainsbury's and Morrison's in one segment. I'm not quite sure about that. And it's got Asda and Tesco in another segment, and it's got Aldi and Lidl in the cheap and low product range. And why is it, by the way, why is it that Aldi and Lidl are cheap? Do you know the reason for that? It's actually up there on that screen. Yeah.
Is it because they stock a small amount of products in comparison to the higher end retailers?
it's a tiny amount compared with other high-end retailers. I've forgotten what the measure is, but I think it's like your average Lidl, I think, will have about 2,000 items in stock, whereas your average same size Tesco will have about 10,000 items. It's a different order of magnitude. And of course, if the smaller stock you have, the less kind of suppliers you have to deal with, and the easier it is to offer cheap prices. And that's how they've done it. That's how they've done it. But of course, they don't market it like that, do they? And actually, probably with loyalty cards and things like that, everybody's getting pretty good understanding of who their customers are and why they should come and shop. Anyway, so that's all about positioning, isn't it? So that's your first approach. And your second approach is a very different thing. It's thinking about the people that you're trying to get to. So it would be about all sorts of ways of doing marketing, either say push marketing or pull marketing. And you're thinking here about all of your stakeholders, perhaps not just your key customers, but everybody from your employees and your trade unions and regulators and distributors, from anything like your financiers, the local community, your neighbours, as well as your customers. Because of course, they're all stakeholders and all ones that need to be thought about in terms of you sending out your messages internally or externally. But in terms of external, you can really divide it into kind of two sorts, can't you? You've got pull marketing and push marketing. So push strategies would be typically, it would be the producer would be aiming through the retailer at the end consumer. So all the marketing is about going through the retailer, whereas pull strategy is slightly different. Can you think about an example of a good pull strategy in terms of marketing? So this is where the retailer is cut out, and typically the producer is going straight to the consumer. He's going straight to the consumer. And what do you think that might be? Well, I think probably one of the best examples of that would be Intel. So you open up your laptop, don't you? You open up your PC and it says Intel inside. And that's an example, isn't it, of how you don't get the opportunity not to have a chip like Intel inside, but then the marketing is done, isn't it, for you automatically through from the producer. And you might be thinking about a set of goals as well with your audience approach as well. So Phil and Turnbull have these suggestions to make, where your target audience, if they were consumers, you would be focusing on your product and service with the idea of asking people to actually purchase your product and service. Or you might be thinking about business-to-business customers, which is pretty much the same thing again. Or you might think about your channel intermediaries, which is the kind of retailers and things like that. And then you might be thinking about developing a relationship within the distribution network. Or you might think about all your stakeholders, you know, your neighbors, or perhaps your staff. And then, of course, one of your communication goals might be about, not about trying to sell your stuff and about making purchases happen and changing people's behavior in terms of purchasing, but just building on your reputation as well. Just building on your reputation as a good firm to work for. So now we're into the nitty-gritty as well. So there are lots of steps in a communication plan. And in a minute, I'm going to ask you this question. So the question is, why aren't we dealing with SOSTAG here? Why are we not dealing with Jonathan Wilson's module, the one that you've just had marks back, where you were providing a strategic marketing communications plan that dealt with situation, objective, strategy, tactics, action, control? You could use that, couldn't you? You could use the McDonald's method of marketing planning, or there was another one, wasn't there? But essentially, a lot of people use this because this was what was taught in the module. Why are we not talking about that? So I'll come back to that question in a second. Why are we talking about something a little bit different? So De Pelsmacher has this way of running a communications plan. And he and his fellow authors say, okay, so what you need at the beginning is some form of analysis. You need to understand what it is you want to communicate and who the competitors are. And then you need to work out a strategy in order to target these people and to meet these objectives which we set for ourselves within this financial constraint, the budgets. You know, how are we going to go about that in terms of our strategy? So this is what to say and to whom to achieve these goals. Yeah, how are we going to go about that? And then you actually end up by creating the message and delivering on the budgets and selecting the tools and the channels to take your promotions through. And this is tactics. This is like, how are we going to do it tomorrow, this year? What tactics are we going to employ? And then actually, when you've done it, you've got to look back, haven't you? You've got to have some kind of evaluation measure and some kind of control measure to say, how well did we do against our original objectives and how should we change? That's De Pelsmacher's way of doing it. It's got those 4 big ones on the right-hand side, or they're each broken down into 1, and then 3, and then 2, and then 2. So they're broken down, aren't they, into 8 different sort of slots of those 4, a couple each mostly. Phil and Tom will go, no, Tony, don't do that. This is the way to look at it, like this, because you've got to see all these other things coming into place. Yes, you need a context analysis at the beginning, and you need some goals. Of course you need those things, but with your goals, you need to think about your corporate goals, your marketing goals, or your communication goals. At what level are you doing this? Is this all stakeholders, or are you just thinking about getting people to buy in to your products, or just purchase your products and change their behavior that way? And when you've done that, yes, you need a communication strategy. And that will be informed by your communication mix. And then you have to select which tools you're using, which media you're going to, and what kind of content you're going to have. How are you going to make your adverts look in order to reach these people? What agencies, third parties, are you going to work with? How are you going to go about the marketing research so that you can then really understand the context in which you're operating? And when you've implemented that, you've got to think about a schedule in which you do it and resources in which you do it. Oh, and then when you've done all that, you must come at the end to have a look and evaluating that, yeah? And it's, forgive me if I'm wrong, but that's pretty much the same thing, isn't it? With just different words. There are fewer colors on that box, but it's pretty much the same thing, isn't it? It's got those steps in it. And I suggest you can use one of those too. That's absolutely fine. You can use, that's come out really badly. Or you can use this, you can use this. So I think the 6 key steps that we identified in our marketing plan are: 1, think about the target audience. Who is it you want to send your message to? Then you need to do some kind of situation analysis. You need to think about who the competitors are. You need to think about segmentation, targeting, and positioning. You need to think about not only who you're sending it to, but what channels you're going to use as well. And you need to think about, therefore, about what it is and what your competitors are doing that you need to work around. And then you might think of a few goals, call them objectives, and then you might think about strategies, about the overall way that you're going to achieve that goal. But then you've got to think about, like, achieving that goal tomorrow, over the year. How much is it going to cost? What kind of tactics are you going to use? And then, of course, you need that step at the end, don't you, where you're looking back and you're deciding whether you've done well or not, and deciding whether you should change something and make it better, or leave as is and run all over again. So those, I think, are the kind of 6 key steps, isn't it? You can use any one of those that you like in your coursework. Why not this one? What's wrong with SOSTAC? What do you think? What's different about this coursework than about the one you've just done? So how many P's are we dealing with in this course, in this module? You're doing promotion. How many P's did you deal with in strategic marketing management? All of them. So McDonald's and SOSTAC and those kind of things, that's for writing a marketing plan, isn't it? It's not for doing a communications plan where you're really focusing on how to get the message across to your target audience. You're not dealing with strategies and price and those kind of things. That's somebody else's job. You're not thinking about innovating your products or thinking so much about the brand, although you are. What you're thinking about only is how to communicate that message effectively. And you've really got to decide who you're going to and with what. And that's all those steps are really delivering on, aren't they? That's all about thinking about who you're going to target, what the competitors are doing, what position you would like to put for your products and services in your customers' minds, and develop a strategy and a kind of immediate tactic for doing that, and then looking back and seeing if you've done it well or whether it needs to be changed. That's all you're doing, but you're only doing it for marketing communications. You're not doing it for marketing as a whole. So let's have a look at the 6 steps in turn. Let's whiz through them. This isn't working at all. I took a lot of care to make these slides work really nicely, and they're trashed. So the first thing you want to be thinking about doing is thinking about segmentation, targeting, and positioning, isn't it? It's about that analysis of what the customers are doing, what you're doing against your competition as well. And it's all about that, isn't it? It's about the lecture that you had last week. The lecture that you're going to have next week is about that other element within that. It's about branding. And if you bring those two things together, you really then thought very carefully about your target audience, who you're going to reach, and what the competition is doing at the same time. And to look at what the competition is doing and to look at your analysis, you might run a pestle or a SWOT, and you might have a perceptual map in there. Yeah, for one of those 4 brands, you might do your own perceptual map. You can do yours, put in some evidence, and bang, it's done. But be really careful when you write a SWOT analysis, because a few of you will say the weakness of Chicory Jam is its weakness, or here's the SWOT analysis, and weakness stands for the weaknesses of Chicory Jam, and that will be it. And a few of you will go, the weakness of Chicory Jam is its price. And then some people will go, price is a big weakness because, I should have chosen threat, shouldn't I, externally. Price would be a big weakness because it means that wages are very, because there isn't enough money internally to use for other things, and wages is very low. And then a really good essay is going to say, look at this paper, and it shows that, you know, that manufacturers, that workers in manufacturing sites such as this pay very little because, you know, their margin is so low for jam makers. They don't have enough resources. I really should have chosen some kind of threat, some external thing. So you can do a SWOT analysis, but by all means apply it, yeah? And the best analyses here in your coursework will be ones where you're really going into some detail, or maybe you put in the whole SWOT analysis at the end of your piece, and when you come to think about the 2 or 3 key points from a SWOT analysis or a pestle, then you write a little short paragraph about each. But either way, put in some references for that. Because if you did a SWOT analysis and you didn't put a single reference in it, it would be like supplying us with a load of information or data, and without a reference, it's just like you could have made it up. It's just your own opinion. But as soon as you put a reference in there, of course, you make it somebody else's life work. And then you're saying, I know that Chicory Jam is very expensive because blog says this in this paper. And I know that the ramifications, the effect of having too expensive a jam at the supermarket means this, because Smith says this. So use references like that and use them in your SWOT and pestle analysis so that you don't end up by telling us your opinion of things, but you're giving us some detailed facts as well. And businesses need to think very carefully about the purpose as well, of course, of their analysis as well. Are they looking at, you know, it's the question about not going too small or too big. Are they trying to kind of give something for kind of creative and media team to go at, or about, is this understanding about the key markets as well and what the competitors are doing? So you don't want to be too broad or too focused with your for businesses in real life. Then you have to think about your marketing objectives, okay? And those objectives, of course, those integrated marketing communications plan objectives, they all need to be SMART. So they need to be, well, I can never remember what the acronym stand for. So is it, what's the S stand for? It's the S in SMART. Specific, yeah, then it's M, which is measurable, then it's A, which is Is that attainable? Is that right? Achievable, yeah? Something that you can actually do, something that's genuinely viable, not something that's pie in the sky. Now we're going to get to millions of people tomorrow. Then it's so MAR, relevant, is it, or sometimes realistic? And then T is just about the most important one of all, isn't it? Which is time bound, isn't it? So that your objectives need to be smart. I can't tell you how many essays I've just, how many reports that I've just marked, where people goes, objectives need to be smart, and then they don't say what their own smart objectives are for the brands that they've chosen. So, what have I got here? Something about a life-saving organisation and Toyota's mission. That encompasses, doesn't it, their own objectives. So they will have their own objectives, which are all about, yes, their mission and the vision, but will be a set of marketing communications objectives, will be a set of objectives based in either kind of strengthening current position or finding a new position or building awareness or changing people's attitude and perception about a brand or simply making sales. So we're into the step 4 here, which is about the kind of strategies that you might develop. So this is where Phil and Turnbull's DRIP comes into it. The idea that you're differentiating something, that you're using your marketing communications to differentiate your product from your competitors. So you're making your product stand out. Even if your jam is exactly the same as everybody else's jam, you're saying that there is something about this, the fact that it's made in Essex, or the fact that it uses, I don't know, organic strawberries. You're making something different about your product to stand out from the category. And you might be thinking about a USP, about the product itself, or even better, you might want to be thinking about the kind of people that buy your jam and how they might be differentiated. You're discerning. You really get it. You want to have healthy jam that hasn't been made with lots of pesticides. You want to have jam which is made to a traditional recipe. You want to have jam which is made locally and hasn't traveled very far. You want to have jam which really kind of resonates with you because it's absolutely fitting your idea of what jam needs to be about. So ideally, you would find a differentiation position which would give you some kind of emotional selling proposition rather than just a kind of something about the product and being a USP. You might want to reinforce and remind people about what your product and services offers to consolidate and strengthen the previous message. You might want to educate people and inform them to make them known of some new change or the availability of some new feature, or you simply maybe want to kind of persuade them and change their approach so that you're encouraging further positive related behavior and developing that kind of two-way relationship. You might also think about having your little communications mix inside your marketing communications plan as well, thinking about what kind of promotions you'll be using, e-coms, direct digital sales, sales promotion, sponsorship, PR, and advertising, and what mix you might be using within that model. You might be thinking about your key messages as well. Are you going to have a unique communications position, something where your message is consistent and is getting across an emotional selling proposition, or something about a creative input, or something which is audience-centered? So this, is the advert for did you know this, didn't you? Does anyone know what this is, advert for?
Cadbury's.
Yeah, it is Cadbury's. How do you know it's Cadbury's? The colour. Yeah. Yeah, the gorilla, yeah. The gorilla. And so I played this advert before, didn't I? In Strategic Marketing Communications. So you've got Phil Collins, and before he comes in with his amazing sort of drum riff, the gorilla is pulling loads of faces. Why is that relevant to chocolate? What is this message here? Do you want to hear the advert? Do you want to watch the ad? Yes? Right. Think about what the message is. Why is the gorilla screwing up his face in all this sort of passion? What is the message there? Right, let me just bring it up if I can. Oh, that's the American one.
I'm so nervous. Why am I so nervous to sew? Turned on. It's not even turned on.
I just bought us our digital rail cards on the Trainline app.
What?
Tickets and rail cards in the same place.
No.
A third off most journeys.
No.
So, you know the adverts for Cadbury's, you know, chocolates, and the gorilla screwing his face up. You know that there's going to be this kind of explosive drum burst. What's that got to do with eating chocolates?
I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Oh Lord, and I've been waiting for this moment for all my life. Oh Lord, can you feel it coming in the air tonight? Oh Lord, oh Lord.
This is a really extended mix, actually. This could be the end of the lecture.
I've seen your face before, my friend, but I don't know if you know who I am. Lost in my soul, I just did. So in mine twice.
So at home, if you're thinking about this and you're thinking about the message, what message does that have?
I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Oh Lord, well I've been waiting for this moment for all my life. Oh Lord, I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Oh Lord.
Thank you, Phil. That's quite enough of that, I think. So, what do you think? What's the advert all about? What's the message behind the advert? What's the message behind the advert? So you know it's about chocolate. You know that now because you know that Cadbury's have used that purple, and I think they failed, didn't they, to trademark that Pantone colour purple for against Kraft, who wanted to use it for against Nestle, who wanted to use it for themselves. Anyway, they tried to protect that purple colour. That's on dairy milk. This advert's dairy milk. It's a type of chocolate. What's drumming got to do with dairy milk? What's that track got to do with dairy milk? What's that got to do with eating chocolate?
I think chocolates in general are, known to improve or increase your energy levels, the sugar level. Just what the song's lyrics say is that I can feel it.
Yeah.
Probably he's just
Yeah.
enjoying the.
Why is the gorilla screwing his face up before he starts the drumming?
He's probably enjoying the taste of
Yeah, yeah. Well, he hasn't started to enjoy the taste, is he? It's about the anticipation, isn't it, of putting the chocolate in your gob? Yeah. Well, if you're nodding, why didn't you say that? Because you've made me draw it out. It's true, isn't it? That's what it's about, isn't it? You tell me what it's about. It's about the advert. What's the message in the advert?
Like he's excited to eat it.
It's about anticipation, isn't it? It's about you're going to have this amazing taste sensation. You've got a huge chunk of it in your hand. You've got at least 4 of those cubes in your hand. You're going to have this amazing taste sensation, and it's the anticipation of it. It's an emotional moment, isn't it? Just about to put in your gob and trash your kind of diet for the day. And at that moment, you are anticipating it. The old gorilla's getting ready with the drums, and that's why those two things are linked. That's why that advert is like that. Anyway, so when you come to do your integrated marketing communications plan, don't you, to have a message. You need to have a message, and the message behind this one is actually the sensation of chocolate is so good, the anticipation of it is worth the wait. Yeah, like Guinness, like pouring the head on a pint of Guinness. What about the key messages here? And we've done these as well, haven't we, in strategic marketing management? We had a look at what's the key message here. Do you think it's the similar sort of message? Do you think let's have a think about the messages and how they might be the same thing. At home as well, you're very welcome to kind of join in here and let me know what you think. Yeah, what do you think? What's the message here? Is it looking forward or back? In these both adverts, then they've got quite a lot in common, aren't they? Haven't they? They've both got pretty happy, smiley people in them. That's the first thing, isn't it? Are the adverts, do you think, looking forward or back? What do you think? Do you think the adverts looking forward or back? Forward, yeah, maybe. Or what do you think about the colour? Yeah, it's like memory. Why did you say that? Because it's black and white. Yeah, I think it's black and white. Black and white would be a little bit of a shorthand, wouldn't it? Maybe you don't kind of think so because black and white films are a thing of the past. When I don't know whether, yeah, I did have some black and white films when I was a tiny kid, and certainly had a colour TV. Sorry, didn't have a colour TV until I was, I don't know, 20 something. Or my parents didn't until I was, no, probably a bit younger than that. But black and white is looking back, isn't it? It's nostalgic. It's something about dreams, isn't it? About memories and things like that. Do you think? Nostalgia. What else is it saying? What about the text? What does the word eternity mean? What does the word eternity mean? Another word for eternity would be what?
Forever.
Forever. Yeah? So what's that saying about perfume? It's saying about, so it might be looking forward. It might be being about this love is forever, isn't it? So what's the message on the left-hand one? Do you think that's aimed at men or women? Do you think it's aimed at men? The left-hand one? This one? No? Maybe both people? Maybe, well, I say both people as if it were gender binary, which it probably was in those days. But just leaving that aside, it's a pretty stereotyped world with Calvin Klein, because look, the men's bottle has shoulders on it, yeah, and the women's bottle has a waist. It's all a bit tacky, really. But who do you think that's aimed at? Do you think that's aimed at the men or the women in the advert? What What do you think? You won't get it wrong, I promise you. It's not like I'm trying to teach you. I'm just trying to get you to think about it. Trying to get you to think about what communications message might be behind these adverts. What do you think? Do you think that's about? Do you think that's aimed at men and women? I think it might be. Do you think it's aimed at people who are in love? Is it, or could it be? Could it? Go on. You're about to say something. Now you're cooking, or maybe somebody who's just lost love. Yeah, and it's going, oh, look at those two people, and it's giving you this little feeling inside. You think, damn, I did have that, and now I've lost that, and that horrible feeling where you're kind of, where your love life's gone wrong. Or maybe that really nice feeling when you're looking forward and you're just beginning, and you've just met somebody new, and you're just about to spring into something. And Calvin Klein's tapping into all of this, isn't it? But it might even be for older people. It might be for old men like me. Just looking back and thinking, oh God, yeah, I remember when I was in my 20s, and I just had that experience. That just reminds me of that experience. Just like the one on the right might also remind me. Do you think that's aimed at men or women? So now we're looking at the one, where is that taken? Where do you think that picture is? So it's black and white again, and this time you've only got the shoulder bottle. So we think that advert is aimed at men?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yes.
What, for men to buy for themselves? What, or kids?
Yeah.
Really? What else do you think it might be? Where are they?
Women to buy for their childhood men.
Sorry?
Childhood
They're what?
Childhood.
Yeah, they are. They're on holiday, aren't they? Do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're on the coast, I think. They look like they're on the coast to me. That to me looks like North Norfolk coast. You know, you can see a bit of water there, can't you? You can see a reed bed. Yeah, they're having a great time, those two. There's got to be father and son. So who's that aimed at then? Is that what you just said? I didn't quite hear you. Yeah, childhood memories. So that's a brilliant idea. So you could be either of the protagonists in that picture. You could be looking back on the time when your dad was alive and so you could be an old man like me. You're looking back at the time your dad hugged you on holiday when you had a really great time. And he chased you in the dunes or something like that, and you saw the bittern or you went and built the biggest sandcastle ever. Yeah, you could be the kids looking back in the picture now as a grown-up. Or you could be the grown-up about thinking about, brilliant time you had on holiday. Or you could be who else might be in this family. Yeah.
Magazines, I've never met a man who's actually bought a magazine. So I presume it's for women who see that and then want to trade it over.
Yeah, so I think so. This was in a magazine advert. This was a magazine advert, and I think it's probably aimed at women, isn't it? So this is aimed at women who've lost their partner, or their kids grown up and left home, or they're in this position where they just had a most brilliant holiday. And either way, they're looking back on some amazing event, family event, where everybody was happy and fun, and it's nostalgic, isn't it? Looking back on something forever, where there was this love within the family and everything was going wrong. Sorry, everything was going right, and maybe everything's gone wrong. Maybe this is something where you've lost love, like on the left-hand side, and suddenly, or maybe this is something where you lost a partner, or something like that, or father's no longer around, or something like that, or you've been divorced, or something horrible's happened, or it could be that something fantastic has happened. But either way, Calvin Klein are tapping into that memory, aren't they? And they're trying to associate themselves with the brand in good times, because these people are, nice-looking people, the grown-ups, and they've got happy, smiley faces, and they look like they're having a great time. And so why wouldn't Calvin Klein trying to get those messages across about their own products and what they're trying to do? And you might think about doing a SWOT analysis for your media mix, and you might think about where you're going to take your adverts and your promotions for your brands in your coursework: print, television, outdoor, billboards, posters, radio, cinema, internet, digital, direct. All those things are available to you. But at the end, you've got to set some budgets for it as well, haven't you? You've got to think about how much money it will cost, what kind of schedule you're going to have to deliver on your plan. And you need to think about some of these things as well: where in and where out effects. The idea that the more that you expose people to an advert, the more they get used to it, and the more the advert becomes effective, up to a certain point when actually it becomes repetitive and tedious, and overexposure leads to negative results as well. And so you want to get to the place where those lines cross, and hopefully don't over repeat your advert so that it becomes boring. You might want to think about an advert which has continuous advert if you've got advertising, if you've got a huge budget, or you might want to pulse it around, say, holiday periods or something like that. So frequency of your spend as well is really important. And when you've done all that, of course, you need some process for looking back and seeing if you've achieved those objectives, the ones you set in an earlier step as well. And you need to be able to find some way of measuring, perhaps through recognition or recall of the brand, or maybe purchasing decisions. And you need to about some way of testing to see whether your objectives have worked or not, and whether your tactics have worked and your strategy is working in achieving your integrated marketing communications objectives. Measuring effectiveness online is tricky. There's loads in the Tabell's Mapper book about how you need to differentiate between people who are just fully engaged with your website or just browsing, whether you have actually kind of interaction with people with your advertisements, or whether you're just exposing people to your messages. And if you're talking about your websites, again, it's about, you know, what kind of people are visiting, with what use, how long do they stay, do they go on to a buying phase afterwards, do they become loyal customers? So you might think about as well about your digital marketing and how you might measure the effectiveness of that, because you can't necessarily always see a link between advertising spend and sales. There's often a big gap in time and in reality between those two things. But either way, in your seminars next week, we're going to be looking at the top two. We're going to be looking at how you might go about target audience and what kind of situational analysis. So you can do this in little groups or individually, and I'll be giving you some of the things to actually get you started with your own bits of coursework, choosing one of those brands and actually starting to have a look at who you might choose for your target audience, for your own plan, and what kind of situation analysis you might want to run. So that's it. So we have looked at the coursework and we put it into context for this module. Is there any questions at all? Good. Any questions at home? I'll stop the recording.